Marvelous faith. What a story. Many of you know the story, but the details are marvelous. I'm going to wait just a moment to read the passage until I can ask an opening question for us. Most people would feel comfortable telling you they know what faith is, and many people get it wrong. Sometimes, even among wonderful, godly, sweet Christians who have faith, who walk by faith, who live by faith, it's hard to explain what it is. It's like beauty. You know beauty when you see it. You know an absence of beauty, but defining beauty would be tough, wouldn't it? We have a perfect example of faith today. In fact, the individual in our story, Jesus is going to say, has the greatest faith of anyone he's met. That is a high compliment. So I just want to make sure that you and I have the right words for faith, and God gives us the definition. This is from the Christian Standard Bible, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now, faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is seen. Faith is not feeling. Faith is not hoping. Faith is not irrational, a leap of faith in the dark. Faith is not true for you and not true for me. Faith is not, I really hope that, but I don't know. Faith is actually seeing what's there. When you act by faith, when you were saved by faith, you did the only rational thing you could do. Because faith is a type of second sight. You see by your eyes, and we worry about people who see with their eyes and they still run into objects, and they still trip. But with the second eyes of faith, you see things that other people don't see. In that sense, faith is a superior way to see. I pondered that all week, and then it dawned on me Friday that actually not having faith is a deficient sight. So you could think that faith is extra sight. If you woke up in the middle of the night and suddenly you could see your entire house, you have cat vision, they see 6 times better than we do in the dark. You'd be amazed. Your neighbors would be like, wow, look at them doing yard work in the middle of the night. But actually, to lack faith is to not function the way God has made us. There is the rarest form of color blindness, and all the colors go to black and white. Can you imagine that? So people say, what a beautiful fall, what a beautiful sunset. They're marveling, they're excited about life, and all you see is black and white. That is the way it is in life without faith. It's not that you and I see things that aren't there. It's that with the gift of faith, you can fully see all God's made. And we see an example of that as I read our passage today. Matthew chapter 8, beginning in verse 5. And when he entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, entreating him and saying, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering great pain. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under our roof. But just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes. And to another, come, and he comes. And to my slave, do this, and he does it. Now when Jesus heard this, he marveled, and said to those who were following, truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel. And I say to you that many shall come from east and west, and recline at the table with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom shall be cast out into the outer darkness. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said to the centurion, go your way, let it be done to you as you believed. And the servant was healed that very hour. Let's start with the seeker. And I don't want us to miss where we're at. Jesus has come down out of the mountains. He's in Capernaum. If you wanted to think of Jesus' home base, his hometown, in December, we'll celebrate the birth of the King in Bethlehem. Raised, though, in Nazareth, and when he begins his ministry, Jesus actually moves to Capernaum. This is home base for him. We'll find throughout the Gospels that he leaves Capernaum and he goes and does ministry and he comes back. Might have even lived with Peter and his family there. So, just so you know, when we run into Capernaum, that's Jesus' home base. He comes and goes from there. But then who is this person? He's a centurion. These are not generally people of faith. These are commanders of the Roman army. True to their name, they commanded a group of 100 men loyal to Rome. And Israel at this time is a conquered nation. And they are high leaders in the invading army. It'll be centurions that will supervise the crucifixion of Jesus. It'll be centurions later who persecute Christians, kill them. And yet this man comes to Jesus, and he comes already with faith. And although it's not the point today, I do want to make a note that in the Bible, when you run into military men, they're generally men of faith, either before or after they meet Jesus. The Bible has a favorable view of military men, and I'm going to suggest to you in this passage the reason why. Because there's a fundamental requirement for faith, and military men often have that. It's not a surprise to me that the generation that experienced World War II came back and attended churches in record numbers. Not a surprise at all. This is centurion. Just a reminder for Jesus to even talk to him. He's fulfilling his own command, love your enemies. So as they speak, here's what I want you to hear. Jesus asks them a question. Now, fair is fair. I've criticized the NIV before, and today I need to commend it. Sometimes the NIV tells us what Jesus meant, not what he said. And so if you have an NIV, you already have this. But Jesus actually is asking a question here. Maybe you come in the house and you say, leftovers for dinner? Well, you don't put a question mark on the end of that. You write that, but it's a question, right? Jesus says, okay. Literally, he says, I will come and heal him. But he actually says, should I come and heal him? Not yes, not no. But Jesus turns around and says, shall I come and heal him? Jesus is a master fisherman. He encounters people and he's going to bring them to faith. He wants to dialogue with the centurion. If he was only concerned about healing the servant, he would have just said, done. But Jesus says, let's talk for a moment. Should I come and do this? You know, Jesus does that with people in the Bible. To the woman whose daughter is sick, she's asking Jesus to heal, and Jesus won't even talk to her. She's a Syrophoenician woman. She's the wrong ethnicity. And finally, Jesus says, don't give the bread to the dogs. And she says, can I just have the crumbs? And Jesus says, great faith. Sometimes Jesus brings a barrier, a reason to wonder. Have you ever thought about that? You're saved by faith. You're heaven bound, and yet you look at your life and you'd say, you know, there's things in my life that make me question. Why doesn't God make it easier for me? If I'm going to heaven, if my family's going to heaven, why is life so hard? And part of it is to draw out your faith. Jesus here says, shall I come to your house? And the answer this man gives is amazing. Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. The first thing faith does, I think, is the most difficult thing. Faith gets a realistic view of itself. The first thing that comes with faith is humility. People say, I have faith. I believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus died for me. And you look at their life and you think, what a proud person. You have never met my Jesus. The first thing that happens when you look at Jesus by faith is you suddenly know who you are. Now, this man, unlike the leper, is not a shamed person. This man doesn't say, I have shame. I have problems. No one likes me. This man says, compared to you, Jesus, I'm nothing. You see that? When you and I look at Jesus, his life, his ministry, his words, the first faith response, whether it's the first day you're a Christian or the last day, whether it's Sunday or Wednesday, the first thing that happens when we look at Jesus is you and I get in our hearts right. I am not worthy. And do you notice that Jesus doesn't correct this? You see, there's a danger today in churches. Every generation has a danger. We have so picked up the good news of the gospel that we say to people, you're amazing. You're an overcomer. You're awesome. Just listen to the radio. I can hardly listen to it because I listen to 5 songs. I'm like, well, thank you for singing about me. That's awesome. I'm amazing. Oh, we left Jesus somewhere. You go to churches, you read books. It's all about how awesome you are. Right? Jesus doesn't say, no, hold on. I'm here. You're great. You're amazing. You're wrong. Jesus actually agrees with him. I'm not worthy. Jesus thinks, you're right. It's a reminder for you and I that the first step every day of faith is to look at God in Jesus and say, I'm not worthy. This man is exhibit A for poor in spirit. The first blessing Jesus pronounces is, blessed are the poor in spirit. And this man is exhibit A. So whether you've been a Christian many years or a few years or need to become a Christian today, the first step is to always get low, right? Humble yourself in the mighty hand of God. We do that in worship. We do that in reading and prayer. This man gets low. And from his lowly standpoint, he can look up and see who Jesus is. You know the phrase from Family Feud, survey says, well, let's do a survey right now at this point in his ministry. Who knows who Jesus is? The centurion. By Matthew chapter 16, many chapters later, Jesus says, what do the crowds say? You're John the Baptist. You're Elijah. You're Jeremiah. No one knows who he is. But you know what this man does? He knows he's God's man. He knows that he speaks for God and acts for God. Lord, I am not worthy to come under my roof. He looks at Jesus. He doesn't know he's God yet. But he will. That takes humility. I'm not worthy, but you are. And honestly, at this point, I think he has a better understanding of Jesus than Peter or James or John. When Jesus says he has the greatest faith of any Jew he's met, he means it. It's marvelous, isn't it? And having looked at himself and having looked at Jesus, then he makes a shocking insight. To this point, Jesus has laid hands on a leper and healed him. Jesus has cast out demons with the word, he's healed. Jesus has never healed anyone at a distance. And this man says, I know who you are. I know who you are. You don't even need to come to my house. I wouldn't be worthy anyway. But Jesus, just say the word and go on with your ministry. Just say it. And I will leave here by faith and I will go home and my servant will be healed. Do you see the faith here? Maybe part of what you and I need to do today is pray, change the way we pray. Instead of Lord, if only, or Lord, maybe we take our request and we say the word, Lord, and my uncle will say it. Say the word, and my sin will be gone. Say the word, and I'll have grace for tomorrow. The greatest faith in all Israel. Just say the word. It's incredible. And then in saying that, this is humble asking, isn't it? When you and I get humble before God, we look at who we are, we look at who He is, we believe He can accomplish it, and we ask, God will answer prayers. Now, it's conditioned on what's best for us. There's times we ask for healing and He won't heal. But this is faith. James says that when we pray, we can't be double-minded. I've done it. Have you ever prayed and wondered if God could answer the prayer? You're dealing with a really stubborn person. You're like, Lord, I don't know. You've been dealing with people for thousands of years, but you don't know my fill in the blank, right? I've heard people say, well, Pastor, I know God can do everything, but He can't save, fix, change, and they'll name somebody. And I'll smile and think, oh, God's worried. He's met somebody He can't change. You see, this is a nice battle for prayer, isn't it? I am not, but you are, and you can. So will you. It's remarkable, isn't it? Marvelous surprises. Let's ask a question here. Who's surprised? So I'm going to read verse 20. Now when Jesus heard this, He marveled and said to those who were following, truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith in anyone in Israel. Jesus is surprised. It's shocking, isn't it? Jesus didn't know. Does the Father in heaven know everything? Amen. And what does the Son do when He comes into the earth? It's like he binds His divine arms behind His back and He humbles Himself. And Jesus gets tired. And He gets thirsty. And He can bleed. And He doesn't know everything. And here, He's surprised. You have to know that in the ministry of Jesus, or else Jesus is play acting. This isn't like Jesus goes, oh, surprise! Imagine how surprised I am. I didn't know this was happening. He's not lying. Jesus is shocked. This is the same word for when they marvel at Jesus' ministry, miracles. In His humanity, Jesus doesn't always know. And the Father brings this beautiful surprise. Jesus says, oh, wow. My disciples have been following me. They get scared. The multitudes want me to feed them. The religious leaders don't understand me. And you get it. Jesus, the delighted surprise. Isn't that amazing? I love that. It happens again in Matthew. Later, Jesus will say that He doesn't know the day He'll return. Sometimes Jesus learns. And a reflection I had when I thought that is how great Jesus was to step into that kind of role, right? To leave heaven and knowing everything, to come into the earth, to have to live a dependent life on the Father. For me, for you. This is the Jesus on the way across. Well, the surprise is the centurion isn't. He gets exactly what he says. He gets up that morning, he says to his wife, I'm going to go to Jesus and Jesus is going to heal the servant. She says, what? He says, yeah, I'm going to go to Jesus, the Jewish king. I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to come home, and on my way home the servant's going to be healed. And that's exactly what happens. The last verse, verse 13. Go your way, let it be done to you as you have believed. May it be so. Sometimes people get weird about that. They think that there's like this word of faith, and the man had faith, so Jesus healed. Jesus basically says, okay, exactly what you wanted, I'll grant to you. It's amazing, isn't it? That Jesus is surprised by his faith, but the centurion is not. Did you remember why he's not surprised? Verse 9, here's the point I want to make about the military and about authority. The reason why he believes his servant can be healed is, I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes. And my slave do this, he does it. He says, I understand authority. And I have authority. I'm a centurion. If a centurion told you to do something, he does it by the power of Caesar in the Roman Empire. To obey a centurion is to obey Caesar, and you might live to see the day. And to disobey a centurion is going to go badly for you. You want men and women who serve in the military understand faith? They understand authority. They went through boot camp. They understand commanding officers. But we live in a world that says, you know, authority, whatever. This man says, Jesus, you have all authority in heaven and on earth. And whatever you say will happen. And he believes that. For those who've been in those situations, they understand, right? He believes Jesus can heal, and he does. But that's not the end of the surprises, because again, I do it. I think you do it. Don't we? Like in the kid's story, you remember this? And Jesus heals the centurion's servant, and then, do you remember the rest of the story? Because we tend to not tell it. I'm not being critical, but often Jesus does something, and we read the miracle, and then we miss what he said. Jesus is not done. See, there's 4 more verses here. There's 5 verses to get the centurion's servant healed. There's 4 of explanation. And so this is the surprise. This is what Jesus says. Jesus takes the moment and he teaches. You can hear that. Verse 10, truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel, and I say to you, he's invoking his authority, that many shall come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Surprise! Many foreigners will be saved. Now that's a little less shocking for you and I because we're all foreigners. You may be ethnic Jewish, and if you are, you're commended. I don't know that about you. But all of us are foreigners. All of us are Gentiles. And we read so quickly the Bible that we don't get how miraculous this is. He's Jewish. He's the Jewish Messiah. He's come to be the King of the Jews. And here he is saying, many will come. Thank God for that. About 150 generations ago, your ancestors were alive in the 1st century. Mine were somewhere. They weren't saved. Go back far enough, and our families were pagans. That might be just your parents, or it might go back far enough. But at some point, if you go back far enough, our ancestors worshipped idols. And they were not God's people. And Jesus says, I'm telling you, many are coming. And anytime you walk into a church that's not Jewish, anytime you see people and read mission stories, you see the multitudes coming. You see the surprise, don't you? It's amazing. Revelation says a great multitude which no one can count from every nation and all tribes and peoples. Southern Baptists alone, every year about 90,000 people around the world who are not Americans become Christians. New tribes, new peoples. You know, this prepares us for the Great Commission at the end. This gospel is going to end and say, now go take the message of the King to everyone. Again, good job, church. I cannot tell you how excited I am about our 2 missions proposals that have been approved. That we would take of the bounty we've received and we would send it for souls. Our state director, Nate Armstrong, is so excited he's coming here December 10th to talk to you about it. He said, "Can I come thank your church?" I was like, "Absolutely." Because the end of the matter is this: the nations must come. And Jesus says they're coming. But that's not all he says. Verse 12. "But the sons of the kingdom shall be cast out in the outer darkness." Many Jews excluded. Well, this is the good news. His Jewish disciples, his Jewish crowds. Jesus says, you'll be surprised who's going to be in heaven. Foreigners are going to eat with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but what's he say? The sons of the kingdom will be cast out. And not just excluded. Again, remember with Jesus, although he doesn't say hellfire and brimstone, what's he talking about here? In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is quite shocking. People like this centurion will dine with Abraham. And many of the Jews will not. Wow. And that's honestly history, isn't it? That the Gentiles, our ancestors, have received the gospel in the way the Jews have not. Now, there are saved Jews. And the number grows every year. But you know, we still live in that tragedy that the people for whom Jesus came have not yet received him. And as I read this text, I smiled and thought, oh Lord, see, you plan everything, right? In our 33rd message on Matthew that we began in January, you knew that we would need to say, worry about the Jews today. Pastors don't have to go looking for the headlines. The headlines will come and find their sermons. So let me just say 2 things about the Jews that we can say from the Bible. Number 1 is they are not God's children until they receive Jesus. Sometimes Christians get confused about this. They are not God's children yet. Your neighbor who's going to sleep his life away on Sunday morning or go boating and fish, and the Jew on the holy soil of Israel are on the same spiritual condition. Your friend that goes to church and they do the rituals and they don't really believe in Jesus, but they believe in works righteousness, and the Jew who goes and does all the customs of the Bible are in the same spiritual condition. They still need Jesus. A saved Jew and a saved Gentile are the same. We are one. And sometimes I run into Christians who feel like second class. Well, God's children and then us. No. You're as much a child of God as Abraham and the centurion. But here's the great news. God has a plan for the Jews. He has a plan. This is Paul. This is from Romans chapter 11. And in this way, all Israel will be saved, just as is written. The deliverer will come from Zion, and he will remove ungodliness from Jacob. And many of us, I would say the majority of Christians, have read the Bible throughout the years and said, someday the Jews are coming back. And so as you pray in this conflict, as you pray that Palestinians receive Jesus, and you pray that Jews receive Jesus, and you pray that Iranians receive Jesus, as you pray for those nations there, know that God has a plan. Should we defend Israel? Of course. They're our ally. They're a democracy, but they are where God is gathering his people, because someday, the gospel is going to sweep through there. I don't think it stops with Israel, by the way. I think it sweeps all the Middle East. If you were in the 1980s and you said, someday the Iron Curtain is coming down, and someday the gospel will preach in Russia, people would think you're crazy. God crushed the Iron Curtain. Oh, there are great days ahead. There are great days ahead. You and I need to pray. We need to pray it's bad there. But don't give up hope. You and I have the only hope in the world that God's plans for the Middle East are not over. God will save his people. And they will not be Jewish. They'll become Christians like us. And we'll be together forever. great news. And the last surprise is probably the greatest one for you. Did you notice that? That heaven's a party. I think throughout the years here, people said to me, Pastor, the strangest thing you say is that eternity is here on earth. Right? Because we do this heaven thing where it's clouds and sky and angels. And do you hear this language? Many will come from east and west, that physical directions, and will recline at a physical table with physical Abraham and Isaac and physical Jacob in the physical kingdom of heaven. Heaven's physical. Jesus is coming back bodily, physically, visibly. And when Jesus comes back, he stays here. And heaven is a party on earth. It's eating and drinking wine and feasting, and it's physical. People say, well, I went to church, but I didn't go to the cookout because the cookout isn't very spiritual. Well, I don't know. I think you're practicing for heaven, aren't you? I mean, I don't know what the new heaven and earth is like, but I'm telling you, it's a physical place. It's eating. Next week, when we take the Lord's Supper, remember what Jesus said. He takes the wine, he says, I will not drink of this wine until I drink it new with you in the kingdom of heaven. Celebration, feast. And so here we have it. We have an image of heaven. We have an image of hell. And we have faith that makes a difference. Marvelous faith. Three thoughts. Please stay with me. May your faith and God's promises grow. Now, for a few today, that might mean salvation. That might mean that today, for the first time, you say, I see it. You know, I've always heard it, but today I saw that I need Jesus as my Savior. Welcome to the faith. Let us know. Come and repent and believe. And let us celebrate that God's given you the gift of faith and saved you. But everybody else here needs courage, don't we? Lord, just say the word, and there can be peace on earth. Lord, just say the word, and there can be peace in my heart. Lord, just say the word. You see, you and I need courage. Because honestly, when we get frightened as Christians or we get worried, that's not faith. Faith is God can do everything His good and perfect will wants to do. And when you and I are walking by faith, we have courage. Daniel in the lion's den, or Joshua and the people around Jericho. Those aren't just stories in the Bible. If the Bible's written today, your cancer, your struggle, your finances would all be stories of faith. Courage. That's what I'd like for you to pray for today. Lord, just say the word, and I'll stop worrying. Lower your assessment of yourself. Listen, it's wonderful to be moral. It's a blessing, right? Blessed the pure in heart. I'm thankful when I'm around Christians, and they're so good that if we followed you around all week, we couldn't find a sin. Isn't that cool? We're like the body count on Sunday morning and be like, yep, she made another week. Nothing wrong. But the danger is that we begin to read and think what other people say about us. Lower your assessment of yourself. Look at Jesus today and say, Lord, even if I followed you for 50 years, I'm not worthy. Had a great conversation this week at the hospital. God gave me a moment to speak to someone there. It became longer than I thought it was, and I got to talk about the gospel, and I thought we were on the same page. It was so good. I mean, I'm talking, and they're explaining, and then they said, well, God left us here on earth so we can prove we're ready for heaven. And I thought, nope, everything I just said didn't work. Not yet. Lower your assessment of self. By grace, through faith, we're saved. And change the way you pray. May you and I pray more boldly this week. Not, Lord, if you could, or Lord, please pay attention to me, or Lord, I know you're tired. But this week, by faith, lowering yourself, looking up to Jesus, we say, Lord, just